Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome back to this week's episode of Podiatry Marketing. With me, as usual, is Big Jim Max. How you doing today, Jim?
Tyson, I'm doing fantastic. Life is good here in Montreal. I've got nothing to complain about.
Yes, well, July is just, I always say, winter, Cairns, nothing to complain about either. It's happy days. Happy days, sunshine, it's great.
It's good to hear.
Okay, what are we talking about today? We should just dive in because normally we have a bit of banter. Oh, actually, before we dive in, I want to point out, I'm going to ask a question because you went and checked out a few episodes back. You said if a certain bear runs at you, if you zigzag, you
You're
can
gonna
get away
call
from
me. You're
it.
gonna call me out like this.
Yeah, and you said you checked the facts and
Nothing but lies and myths about how to escape a bear. Everything I've said, everything I've read since that says that you have no chance, no matter how you run, to escape a bear. So either, if it's a certain type of bear, you got to punch it in the face or try to gouge its eyes out. If it's a different type of bear, which I don't remember if it's a grizzly or a brown bear, you need to lay down and act dead. So yeah, I don't definitely do your own research on this. So I apologize to all those listeners that were eaten by bears or alligators since the last time I mentioned that on the show.
I know I hate it when we lose listeners because of poor facts. We haven't checked our facts. But
Yeah.
I do know if you're chased by a crocodile, zigzag because they can't change direction very well.
Okay. I'll keep that in
Don't
mind.
punch it in the face.
Yeah,
You'll
definitely
lose a
not.
hand.
You'll definitely
Uh,
lose a hand.
okay, now we've given out some interesting facts for everybody. What are we talking about today?
Yeah. So today we're going to dive into one of the kind of the questions I get asked sometimes by colleagues or people that come onto my website. It's, when does someone know that it's time to switch their podiatry marketing providers? This is, sometimes people get into utilizing a provider and they've been with them for years, but, and they just know it's not working right. Or maybe they've outgrown, they started with kind of a generalist marketing firm, and they feel like they built a decent relationship, but there's definitely some key signs or some ways of knowing that it is time to to kind of consider what your other options are out there if you're looking to grow your practice or develop kind of a niche practice in a way that really is visible to all your local patients that you want to have come in and treat in your clinic.
Okay, so you reckon when you're dealing with something, there's a couple of things that you can identify pretty easily that will just let you know maybe it's time to change.
Yeah, there's some like super key signs of kind of, would say, either ineffective marketing or, you just know that that relationship isn't working for you. The first being, kind of stagnant growth. Just if you're not getting kind of new patients in the door or, you're trying to market specific types of procedures or trying to treat a certain niche of patients and they're not coming in, it's a clear sign that, things have kind of stagnated. Maybe you've had some discussions with that marketing agency or that consultant and either they're, it's kind of falling on deaf ears or, it's been 2 quarters in a row and there's been really no either plan or execution that you feel like they're making an effort in a way or just it's not yielding the results you're looking for. That's the kind of the first thing as far as one of the signs to be aware of is just, you're kind of stagnating and kind of growing the practice the way you want to.
Yeah, so you want more ingrown toenails, you want more orthotic patients, and 2, 3 months down the track, you're getting less or you're not getting, there's no growth at all. It's exactly
Well,
the same.
you're getting less or there's just no like clear planning, right? Like you feel like told this agency or the consultant, month after month for 3 months or 6 months, and there's no coming back and saying, hey, yes, we agree that you would like to have more of those. And here's step one or what we're going to try to do, or here's we tried step one and here's step two. So not everything is going to work when it comes to marketing. So it is important not to like be overly harsh, but if
Yeah.
they're deflecting or coming up with excuses or not really listening, I would say is a big thing. It's really really important that that's kind of a bit of a red flag or the first red flag when it comes to some signs of kind of ineffective marketing.
And you should have probably some like really good open lines of communication with them as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like I talked about a little bit in that previous one, is like the open lines of communications is huge, and poor communication can take different forms. Sometimes it's not listening, or it can sometimes be they're focused on other metrics that you don't really care about. Let's say, sometimes when I work with clients and with podiatry clinics, they say, their previous agency always talked about, clicks, or they talked about page views. But to be honest, podiatrists don't really care about those kind of metrics. They care about
Mm.
making appointments, getting that visibility,
Bums on seats.
bums on seats,
Yeah.
doing more of specific types of procedures, the numbers of those procedures. So also, what is the response time? Obviously your relationship is important and you want to be valued. If there's something that's drastically gone wrong, maybe, getting in touch with you after, 6 to 12 hours or 24 hours is pretty normal with a marketing relationship. But, if they're taking days or weeks to return emails or address very specific questions you have for them, that's a red flag, because, you're kind of outsourcing the marketing and the visibility and the brand of your practice to someone else. And then if they're not willing to communicate with you at a reasonable rate, it just leads to kind of things dragging out, right? So if it takes them a week to receive an email, and then maybe they have to forward that to someone else in the company, it just, it can kind of lead to a kind of a dysfunctional relay where people aren't getting back in touch with you, and it takes a long time to, accomplish some of these objectives that you have. And also, it's just kind of inadequate support of the provider, right? You're paying agencies or consultants money to kind of be available and to kind of be kind of listening to your needs. So if they're not communicating at a cadence that's right, or speaking to you in the way that you understand, because sometimes, if they're so far down the marketing rabbit hole, like I talked about, they don't know what it's like to be in a clinic. If they're taking care of air conditioning repairs or other types of home services, they may not know what you're looking for. Obviously,
Mm.
leads and new patients, they can understand that. But if they're not speaking your level, or they're wasting your time, because one of the reasons they're hiring or outsourcing this is to hopefully save you time, but also bring in those new patients to the door. So if they're causing you to spend more time in it than you would really want to, that's also a red flag.
Yeah, but we've mentioned it before, that if you go to a company that has never worked with a podiatrist before, has no understanding what podiatry is, well, it's going to be difficult for them to help put together some form of strategy. It's like, to me, I don't know how they can put a strategy together when all they're going by is, okay, you might tell them a bit about podiatry, but it's great if they've worked with podiatrists before, or they are a podiatrist, so they actually understand what it, or you, or both, Jim. You are a podiatrist and you work with podiatrists, so you can basically do both. But are some of them just outdated with the way that they do things? It's like, this is just the way we've always done it, so they don't change and adapt.
Yeah, there's some people that just kind of employ outdated strategies. I've worked with other clinics in the past, or they were working with marketing agencies, and they're trying to treat it was like 1995 again, right? Where you could have kind of spammy or scammy links linking back to your website. You could do these kind of like dishonest kind of tactics to try to, rank higher in Google. But, like everything else in life, it evolves over time. And if you're utilizing these tactics that Google is now kind of frowning upon, it can really have a negative impact on your online visibility, which is then going to transfer over to a lack of patients coming in the door. So you really want to make sure that, and sometimes, podiatry clinic owners are busy, right? So they don't necessarily
Mm.
know when people are doing this. So that's why it sometimes makes sense for folks to consider, getting an outside audit or review of what's going on. If, it's not that you don't trust who you're working with, but, if you've been with someone for 5 or for 10 years and you're not sure, what they're doing, or, how things are changing as far as online marketing goes. I think, COVID and kind of everyone kind of going online during the COVID times kind of opened a lot of people's eyes up to, what can be done online. You have video, you can make appointments. There's a lot that can be done online these days. Obviously, the care you provide in person is hugely important, but, as we kind of get into this digital age, everybody's got a smartphone. Everybody's searching for things on these smartphones. So you want to make sure that you're not using these outdated strategies, and you're working with a provider that is staying on top of the latest trends. So you and your practice can be, seen as kind of the go-to expert in your local area.
But I think that applies to every profession. Yeah, would you like to see a podiatrist that's been out for 20 years but has never attended anything in 20 years other than tick a box to say that they have? you know that just their thinking would be outdated on treating particular, certain problems. So to me, I think a marketing provider is exactly the same thing. If they're not staying up to date and utilizing the latest tools available to them, they're just thinking, oh, no, well, it worked for us in 1995. Why should we change now? Yeah, let's put you in the yellow pages. Then I think, that's a bit extreme.
No, but like, you're talking about the right thing though too, because like sometimes it is these technologies that are important, but it's also the matching the right channels to whoever your patient population is. We've talked about this multiple times on past episodes, but if you're treating people over the age of 70 and you have an agency is, hey, we're going to be on TikTok and Instagram and all these things, and you're in Florida or someplace where there's a lot of seniors, and you're doing a lot of senior care, there's going to be a mismatch there, right? And you want to make sure that you're kind of using that right channel for the ideal patient you're trying to connect with. So yeah, sometimes it is keeping up to date with the technologies and those things, but it's also just knowing which channel is right for the type of patient you want to bring into your practice.
Okay. Now I've heard the term before, and we spoke about before, I think, when we talk about sunk costs, where sometimes people they've invested so much time and energy into something that they feel like they've got to keep going, or otherwise they've just wasted all that time and money.
Yeah, exactly. So with the sunk cost fallacy, like you said, maybe you've built a website with a provider, 10 years ago, you've been working with them, they've done changes, they've kind of been your go-to person for an extended period of time. And, you feel like you've committed a lot of time and effort to that relationship to build up your website. And obviously you might still have a lot of goodwill with that person. It'll be funny a lot of times when I talk to podiatrists that are, I do an audit on, or they just ask me for advice. That local person they met at the Chamber of Commerce, or, their brother-in-law, or a friend of a friend built their website. And there's some kind of, social tie to the person that's providing their digital marketing services. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but you also have to think about, where you want to go and what you're trying to do in your practice. And is that the right person to kind of take you to the next level when you're ready for it? If you're just getting started in practice and just need a basic website, maybe your brother-in-law is the perfect person to kind of help you get started at a reasonable price and can kind of get you off on the right step, if you were to say. But at the same time, there are, 5, 10 years down the road, this is a side project for them. Sometimes you'll find that as well. They have someone build a website that's not really minding the store. They kind of almost kind of like a set it and forget it kind of, relationship with their marketing provider. And like I said, you can get away with that for the first 2 or 3 years maybe, but things evolve, technology change, the way that Google ranks pages changes, the way that people want to see and find your practice changes. And if you're not keeping up with those changes, you're falling behind. And it's normal that, you have goodwill with the people that built the website. They've done good by you to start off with. And, considering, I see a lot of kind of, it takes, there's a bit of inertia there, right? Like people, it takes time to go look for a new provider. Their current website is okay, even though it has, footprints on the sand, or, feet hanging off the edge of a dock. Like, I don't really like that, but it's going to take me 5-10 hours to find somebody. And then that person's going to charge, twice as much or 3 times as much. There's always there's reasons not to consider or allow yourself to think about, what the benefits could be by kind of, putting these roadblocks ahead of you. But that's what the sunk cost fallacy does. It just it gives you kind of built-in roadblocks about why you don't worry about that right now. You don't have to worry about, there's other things. Obviously, being a clinic owner, right? You've got take care of your patients, take care of your staff, mind the business, and marketing sometimes sits on the back burner. But, if you're not keeping your eye on the ball or moving it forward, there's going to be somebody else in your local area that's going to be doing so, whether it be a podiatrist or a physical therapist or a physio or a chiropractor or a podorathist. Someone is going to be progressive and moving forward. So if you're not moving forward, you're falling behind. So it's really one of those things where, yes, the sunk cost fallacy is a big deal because it kind of stops people from searching out their best options. But I think it is one of those things that can be overcome by, actively pursuing a little bit of knowledge and maybe understanding who the experts are in these areas.
Yeah, I like to, when we're talking about this particular topic about sunk costs, I like to relate it to buying a motor vehicle. When you buy a car, you might spend $50,000 to buy a car. And then in 5-10 years time, that car's only worth $10,000. You can't keep thinking it's a $50,000 car. It is now a $10,000 car.
Well, the second you drive it off the lot, though, right, it drops like, I don't know, like 20% or something. That's what they say.
Yeah, I think so. But it's one of those things though, you then have that $10,000 car that might be 10 years old. You go and buy a new car. Okay, you've got to invest more money into it. But when you get in that new car, you can tell as soon as you sit in it, as soon as you drive it, the gadgets, what that car can do that the other car can't do. And no matter what you try to do, it can't do it. And I think when it comes to websites and some of the marketing stuff like that, it's what your website did 5-10 years ago cannot do what the new websites do. And,
No, exactly.
and people, as soon as they get into your website or into a new car, they know the difference between an old one and a new one.
No, 100%, kind of, it is what that value you can get from the website or from the marketing that you're doing. It's not necessarily that you have this shiny thing, but how does it function? What is the purpose of having that website, right? When you have a custom built niche website that's directed at the ideal patients you want to bring into your practice, it does gangbusters compared to, a copy pasted website of the exact same thing, created by a company that has 1,000 of the same websites around the country, right? So patients will see that. When they see it, they'll react to it much differently than your cookie cutter website. So I think that's a good point, Tyson.
So for some people though, making the transition to a new provider, and you sort of touched on it a little bit, but sometimes people look at that as, it's just too much work. I'll just stick with what I've already got. They're doing an okay job, but sometimes you just have to do it.
Yeah, I think sometimes you just have to bite the bullet, just see what's out there, right? And I think the best way to approach it initially is just doing some research and due diligence. Like you can obviously search on Google, you can talk to, colleagues, look around and see who's, providing digital marketing services for podiatrists. Obviously, I'm a little biased since I do that myself, but, whoever you're looking at, whoever's websites you think look great, you should definitely try to get in touch with those clinic owners and say, hey, like I saw that you had this website, you're working with XYZ company, you're working with podiatry growth. What is it really like to work with Jim, or what is it really like to work with this other company? And get a general sense of like, if you email them or text them, how quickly do they respond? Is it that day? Is it that hour? Is it a week from then? You really want to know what you're getting yourself into. So, just kind of starting a few steps of research, a little bit at a time can really help you evaluate, potential marketing providers in a way that, doesn't seem overwhelming, but you're kind of moving towards that, functional website that's going to attract your ideal patients as opposed to that kind of website you started out with. So I think it's that research and due diligence portion is that kind of first step that everyone should, consider once they feel like, we talked about some of those red flags previously. If you're starting to feel one of those red flags come to the forefront, doing a little bit of research and due diligence is kind of that first step to move forward with.
Yeah, I do like the idea, what you said. Go and look at websites. And if you like what you see, talk to the person, talk to the podiatrist. I don't think there'd be any podiatrist if you contacted them and said, hey, I was on your website, I live in another state, can I ask you some questions about it? I don't think anyone would say no. Just wouldn't happen.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to like look at their website from the view of what a patient would be looking for, right? Do you have, let's say, like, you just imagine yourself as that heel pain patient or the ingrown toenail patient, and you just arrive on the website, try to like get into the shoes of a patient, and you liked the look of the website, but how functional is it? Can you make an appointment? Can you get some information about what this clinic treats and doesn't treat? Those are the kind of things that will help you know if it's a good feel or maybe a good fit for your own clinic website.
Okay, and what about the transition? So if you already have your website, okay, you're now talking to somebody else. I think it's the transition part that sometimes worries people as well.
No, it definitely can be a concern. I would say that probably 90% of the websites these days are built on WordPress when it comes to types of websites people have. If not, there's definitely ways to make that transition easier, but you want to know, like that's why I think it's important kind of in the transition plan, not just to jump from one provider to the other. It can be really helpful to have an audit or kind of a marketing assessment with that other, the people that you're looking at. Maybe you narrow it down to like 3 different providers or 2. And, if somebody has the ability to provide you kind of, okay, here's what it'd be like to work with me. Here's what we offer, and here's how we kind of make that transition. The transition plan is really, really important because, sometimes you have a contract. I would say that sometimes the clinics that, the marketing providers that clinics are currently working with, they can be pretty restrictive and not always super happy to see you go, right? So maybe you have to give them 30 to 60 days notice, or the
Mm.
contract ends at a certain term. If you don't own your domain name, or you don't own the hosting, there's a lot of kind of small details that have to be worked into this transition plan to make sure that it's as smooth as possible and that you have a minimal amount of downtime for your website and other channels. Because, like I said, most of the people I've worked with when I transitioned to me from other marketing providers have been overall pretty helpful. But I know there are some growth platforms, and for a while there was Patient Pop, which turned into, I think it's called Tibra now, who used to sometimes own all of the content that was on clinics' websites along with domain names, and wasn't
Oh,
always
okay.
happy to transition that stuff over to the individual clinic owner. So these are just things to be aware of if you are considering a transition, understanding what that process would be like when you talk to potential new marketing providers.
Yeah, and I think all the podiatrist could do is just put your podiatry hat on, and if a patient came to you and said, "Can you send all my medical records to the to the podiatrist across the road?" How happy are you when you hear that? Are you like, "Yeah, not a problem, Mrs. Smith. We'll just get that all for you. I hope you enjoy yourself." Straight away, you're like, "Why?" And it's not something you just go. You don't also just go, "Let's make that a priority day to make sure we've got all those records together and we get it straight over there." You go, "Yeah, we'll get that done later today or maybe tomorrow. No rush." So I think this can happen as well with past providers.
No, for sure. It definitely is. There are some relatable things between marketing and owning a clinic, and kind of the
Life,
transfer in patients,
life in general,
for sure.
just life. I was going to give another example, but I'm not going to. It was inappropriate. Uh, so, okay, say you've made the move. How important is it to monitor or evaluate what they're actually doing? Because if you've jumped from one place and you've gone to another, you probably should be keeping an eye on it. They've been taking you for a ride.
Like we talked about a little bit earlier today, I think it all starts with understanding what the expectations are, and developing solid forms of communication. Like I said, we know through an audit or through marketing evaluation, you can kind of work together and get to know each other and see if it's a good fit. Also, what is the reporting regimen going to be like? Is it going to be once every quarter, once every 6 months, once every year? Like, how often are you going to be in contact with this provider? I think at the beginning, obviously, there's a lot of back and forth that has to be done in order to make sure that, expectations are set at a reasonable level, but also there has to be, either forms or easy ways to exchange information that'll make it easy for you as the clinic owner, and also for someone like myself, like as the marketing provider. So there is a kind of a cadence of information exchange that can really help kind of build trust, and really set the objectives to have a successful first month, 3 months, 6 months, and a year. But kind of developing a shared goals, what the metrics are, that will
Yeah.
help you kind of evaluate both sides of how things are performing, and just making kind of ensuring this kind of continuous improvement, because Rome wasn't built in a day, and a good website that really speaks to your ideal patients, it takes some back and forth between what the podiatrist and what the clinic wants, and what the expertise and what the abilities are of the marketing provider, because it is one of those things. It is a team effort. I think sometimes the responsibility lies on both ends. It has to be like an open exchange of information and ideas, but it has to be kind of a nice, kind of being in rhythm with each other in ways that make sense. Because if they're the best marketing provider on the earth, and it takes you a week or 2 weeks to get back to them with a change you want, or or on the other side, if they, you ask for a change and it takes them a month to update a word on the website or the hours of your clinic on Google Business Profile, that's not going to lead to a great initial bond or relationship building between you two. So it's one of those things where there has to be some understanding at the beginning that you're kind of feeling each other out and seeing what it's like. Maybe not unlike dating or getting to know a partner, but then over time, as you build trust, the marketing provider will understand you and your practice better, and you'll understand how that marketing provider can really provide value to your clinic and to the patients in your local area.
Now, I remember the first website I got done and the people I had doing it, anytime I wanted to change, it only took a week and a half to get them to do it. And they go, how slow are you guys? But I remember when people were putting the social platforms onto the websites, but prior to them being there, all of a sudden you could put on Facebook and all that. And then I think all of a sudden you could have a Google link. You have a little Google emblem, they click on it, and it used to go to your Google page, which doesn't exist anymore. And so I remember contacting these guys and saying, I need that Google link on my website. So this is going back a long time ago. I need that Google link on my website. Not a problem. Week went past. How long is it going to take to put the Google link on the website? Yep. They finally said, yeah, it's done. I went to my website, and on the bottom, instead of actually having the logo that you click on it, they wrote Google link. And that was that day that I decided I need somebody else, because they just, one, they were slow, they were not hearing me, and I think they were just out of touch with what was actually happening. So I left.
Yeah, well, that's a red flag, and it's a good reason that you sought out a different marketing expert to help you build your business.
That was a terrible red flag. So, do you want to you've covered a lot. Do you want to recap what you've taken over? Just go through the points. So, put it all together.
So I'd say, like we talked about, kind of the first point being, there's definitely gonna be signs. Obviously it's not necessarily a fun thing to have to switch marketing providers, but it's worse to kind of ignore some of these red flags, whether it be stagnant growth, poor communication, or them using outdated strategies. You just have to be aware that that's happening. And then the next step is to take action, right? So, when it comes to, the kind of the sunk cost fallacy, it can be, you might have emotional attachment to whoever's, previously provided your marketing. Maybe you have familiar relationship, or maybe it's a friend of a friend. But you really need to kind of assess the current value of what your website's doing or not doing to make sure that it's being utilized in a way that shows all the great care you provide to your ideal patients. And that takes an expert and someone that knows what they're doing in the field of podiatry to make that happen. And last but not least, it's important when you make the transition to a new provider that you kind of have some steps to work through, right? So once you identify red flags, you understand that there's going to be a little bit of pain or inertia to get over. How do you make this transition? It's by, researching, doing some due diligence about who else is out there and who can provide you with that kind of ideal platform to get out in front of your ideal patients. Developing a transition plan, and then, monitoring, evaluating, and developing strong communication habits with your marketing provider is really going to set you up for future success. So I think, that's kind of a good place to end it today. But if anyone has any questions, obviously, like I provide these services myself, but at the same time, I may not be the right fit for everybody. But I'm happy to, in the future, if you email the show or email me, jim@podiatrygrowth.com, I'm happy to help, put you in the right direction or give you some feedback that might be helpful to you to kind of build the type of website or online presence that's beneficial to your practice.
No, I think that's a really good comment, what you just said in there too, about you may not be the right fit for everybody. Yeah. You don't want to work with every podiatrist. There's certain podiatrists that you will just fit perfectly with, and they will get really good results. And there'll be other ones where you may not, but they won't know until they talk to you.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, Big Jim, I think we'll leave it there. This has been fun.
Yeah, it's been a good time. And thanks for the conversation, Tyson.
Okay, talk to you next week. Bye.
All right, bye now.